In today's tutorial, I will show you how to create this project which displays the trending movies and TV shows for the week using HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and the Movie Database API. If you have not used the Movie Database API before, you can watch the other video on my channel that shows you the step-by-step process of how to get started using the Movie Database API. The requirements for this tutorial are that you have a basic understanding of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And the main focus of this tutorial is to show beginners how to use an API to build a website. So I purposely have a very simple UI so we can focus more time on how the API works with this project. Switching over to the code, I will first go over the HTML file, then the JavaScript file, then the CSS file. Starting with the HTML file, in the head section, I just have my basic meta tags as well as a link tag so that I can use my CSS file over here. On line 13, we just have a div tag with the ID of movies, which will be important later. And on line 15, we just have a script tag, which we will be using to make API calls to the Movie Database API. Now I will go over the script tag, which will be doing the bulk of our work for this project. Starting on line 3, this is the Movie Database endpoint that we are hitting to get data back about the trending movies and TV shows for the week. The one change you need to make is to make sure you populate the API key variable here with your own Movie Database API key. And you will get your own MovieDB API key by watching my other Movie Database API tutorial on my channel if you haven't already. On the next slide, we are just getting a reference to the div that has the ID of movies, as we will be populating this div with all of the trending movies and TV shows. In the next section, I created a function called fetchMovies, which will fetch all of the movies from the Movie Database API. On line 8, I'm using the fetch API to make an API call to the URL that we created on line 3. Once we get back a valid response, I just call the .json function to convert it to JSON. This is a response that we get back from the Movie Database API. We will get a list of all of the trending TV shows and movies for the current week. We can see that for each movie or TV show, we get back all of the different data that you see here, such as the title and even summary of the movie or TV show. Going back to the code, starting here, we're going to use a for each loop to iterate through each of the movies or TV shows. Then on line 12, I'm calling a function called createMovieCard. Looking at the function, it just takes in media, which in this case is either a movie or TV show. On line 21, I'm just extracting the title, name, and the backdrop path from the given media using array destructuring. On line 23, I'm just creating a new div element and calling it MovieCard. Then I'm just adding a class name of movie item so that I can style it using CSS. Then I'm modifying the inner HTML of the movie card variable by adding an image tag and a div tag. The image tag is used to display the image of the current media, and this is the base image URL that we need to use for the MovieDB API. And then we just need the backdrop path, which we get from the API call. Going back to Postman, we can see that we get a value for the backdrop path. And this is the value that's needed so that we can successfully display the image that we see here for each of the movies and TV shows. And to display the name correctly for movies or TV shows, we can look at the API response and see that movies have a title value that gives us the name of the movie. Whereas for TV shows, instead of getting a title, we get back a name for the name of the TV show. So that's why in this div tag on line 28, we will display either the title or the name depending on which value is populated. Once we've modified the inner HTML, we're just going to return this movie card into this variable on line 12. Then we will append the movie card to the movies container from line 4. The last thing we need to do is just to make sure we call the function that we created called fetchMovies. So that's what I'm doing on line 33. Going back to the project, I already refreshed the page, but you can see this is the API call that's being made. And these are all the results that are being returned back to us by the API. And for each result, we're using the title or name value as well as the backdrop path value. If you wanted to display more information, such as a summary of the movie, you could easily do that by just accessing the value of the overview key. Looking at the Elements tab, we can see here that we have a div of the ID of movies, which is the same div that we have here in our HTML file. That's on line 13. Going back to the project, you can see here that we have a bunch of divs with the class of movie item, and that's the same div that we created here on line 23 and just added the class of movie item to it. And for the last change, if we look inside each of these divs, we can see that they have an image and div tag that we created here. Let's say you wanted to display more info about each movie or TV show. We can easily go back to Postman, see the extra data that we want to display. Let's say in this example, we wanted to display the release date. We could go back to our project. We can duplicate line 28, which is displayed the name or title of our movie or TV show. And now we can just display release date instead. Going to our project, we should now see the release date underneath the name or title of our movie or TV show. And that was the code explanation for the HTML and JavaScript file, but now I will go over the CSS file. Looking at the CSS file, you can see I'm just using basic CSS properties to make various changes, such as changing the font color to white, increasing the font size to 32 pixels, and using the display flex property to align things correctly. And that is the end of this movie database API tutorial project. Hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, please like the video and don't forget to subscribe for more content.